Hi, I'm David. Welcome to Tramex Talks. So today we have joining us on Tramex Talks, Larry Marvel in California. Thanks for joining us this morning, Larry. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, getting through these winter storms, and I appreciate being here.
Yeah,
Thanks for the invite.
Been kind of crazy out there. Thanks for joining us after all those floods, and you guys had an earthquake, all kinds of stuff going on in California these days.
Yeah, well, it's a good time to be indoors and do a recording like
there
this.
You go.
Huh?
Maybe, Larry, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I've been in the floor covering industry on the installation side professionally for a little over 45 years. Out of high school, of course, was military, but then all installation side. Prior to that, I am a third generation installer, so to speak. My father and grandfather were in hardwood flooring and floor covering.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now currently I work as technical support for Tarkett, and on the side, I have what's called Installer Certified, which is a consulting business where I just work personally with installers on questions and answers and
excellent,
and getting them through some certifications. Yeah,
excellent. So,
yeah,
you got a pretty good clue what's going on out in the field these days. Can you tell us what kind of situations you're running into? I know that you've been implementing this time of install moisture testing with our Tramex concrete moisture encounter and the installation quick check. Can you tell us what you're seeing out in the field these days?
Yeah, well, good question, David, because here's the thing is, I go back to asbestos days when we weren't having these issues. And now here we are today where everything has to have, according to ASTM standards, an RH test prior to the installation.
Right.
But what I'm seeing on most sites, especially with our smaller shops and small jobs, is the money's not there sometimes for the RH test, or the time isn't there for the RH test. And I get calls from installers with what should they do? What kind of test should they run? What should we do for, moisture testing the slab prior to the installation of a resilient or some kind of other vinyl back product. Mm-hmm. So just yesterday, received a phone call from a gentleman who does not want to drill holes in a PT slab, mm-hmm. and wanted to know what he should do to test that slab prior to installing what he's going to install, because it needed a moisture test of, I think, 86% RH. Mm-hmm. And, he was at a standstill, a little fearful of drilling holes into a PT slab. So yeah, those kind of questions. Good fun.
What was your advice to that guy yesterday?
Well, I mean, Tramex did a pretty amazing thing with this new MEX5. Did I pronounce that right? Meter?
MEX5 meter.
CMEX5.
Correct.
Day of install kit, which is the one that I primarily use when I go out to sites to check the concrete slabs and stuff.
Yeah.
With installers.
Yep.
And what that kit does is it gives us the information we need on the day of install. That's hard to get from just about anything else you have in front of you. You really need that kind of instant information. With that Tramex meter, I'm able to determine the slab temperature with the thermometer. And after determining the slab temperature, it immediately gives me the readout on the dew point temperature.
Yeah.
Knowing that I need the slab temperature to be about 10 degrees warmer than the dew point temperature in order for most adhesives to start curing,
right? If
not all adhesives.
Right.
So that's one critical reading that meter will give us right away, along with the relative humidity and the ambient relative humidity. And then, of course, the percentage of moisture coming out of the surface of the slab,
right?
That it gives us with that test. So with those tests, what I'm seeing, and from what we've heard Bob Higgins talk about, is the most important part of that concrete for us as installers is around that top 3/4 of an inch of the slab to be the surface we need to adhere our product to get that good bond.
Yeah.
That's the surface that we're concerned about. And that's what this meter's testing. And that's what this meter's telling us, whether we're going to get that bond, number one, and two, and especially the adhesive will start curing under our product that we set into it.
Yeah, you could say this installation Quick Check Plus kit helps you see where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, because that bond line is critical. So you were mentioning, guys using this test, when they weren't able to do initial RH testing for warranty or whatever. Obviously, I'm sure you'd advise people to do what's recommended for warranty coverage. Have you seen any instances implementing this even when they're doing the necessary warranty testing, F2170 or 1869?
Great question, David, because really that's what matters is, up to the point where they get to the site prior to their installation, it's either been a third party or somebody in their company who's certified did the RH test.
Right. So basically they're coming in, beforehand, doing these tests and saying, okay, site is good to install. They're setting up a date. And then, so now these guys are going out to the site, and what they encounter is the next question.
Yeah. I'll give you a really good example, because I got a call about 1 a.m. from an installer who knew me well, and they're installing a vinyl backed product with a pressure sensitive adhesive. And the call kind of went like this, and all the art up to that point, or prior to that point, all the arts tests had been finished and completed. What they didn't know that sometime in between the RH test and when they arrived, somebody had turned off the HVAC system. It was in the wintertime, and the slab had dropped to a pretty cold temperature. And without knowing that, they came into the building with the HVAC running probably 2 or 3 hours prior to getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And they called saying, hey, your adhesive isn't working. It's not setting up. It's not drawing. And so, I had them run through the steps that you would take normally. And we realized that the slab was about 8 degrees colder than dew point. And it was drawing moisture out of the air, putting it into the adhesive and not allowing the adhesive to cure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's the importance. Yeah.
So that's one, you're giving one scenario, obviously, where obviously it's important to be cognizant of conditions at time of install, because in this case, somebody turned off the HVAC, turned it back on. So we know that a slab's not going to heat up as fast as the air, and therefore your problem. Do you see that kind of situation or that scenario where it's setting up for a dew point issue in other settings? I mean, I would imagine in settings where there's no HVAC and there's a cold night and a warm morning, you'll get the same kind of situation.
Yeah. I come from kind of old school, because at one point in my career, I had to manage a bunch of installers.
Mm-hmm.
And manage a bunch of installation sites where we had to figure out dew point without these meters.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I could give advice to an installer today, someone who's running their job site, this is one of the most important tools they can have today in regards to moisture testing for concrete. I'm not saying go against any ASTM standards. I'm saying this is a tool in your toolbox that will give you immediate response back to you what you're dealing with on the substrate. It'll give you immediate information. It'll give you the information you need to continue or to stop that installation until you get the right environment. And I call it basically the journeyman is controlling his installation environment.
Yeah.
And that's what you need.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, the slab temperature, your sundries temperature, and your product temperature all first should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 degrees within one another.
Correct.
of what you're working with.
Right.
And for everything to work correctly. So you've done all this, you've done your acclimation, you've done all, everything you've been told to do. This is just that next tool that Tramex did an amazing job coming out with this meter to give it right instantly in your hand to determine whether you're going to get an adhesive that's going to either give you trouble or it's going to cure.
Yeah,
and nobody wants to sit around for 2 hours and wait for open time. Trust me.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's the beauty of the meter is that it is going to pick up. So it's giving you a percentage of moisture content of that top 3/4 inch, but it is going to pick up a dew point issue as an elevated moisture content. So it does recognize that moisture in the top of the slab, and then you can discern what is the cause of that high moisture content by eliminating dew point or citing dew point. In the cases where you've had job sites where they realize it's a dew point issue, they're having problems, what is the general advice to them?
Well, it depends on what problem they're having.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if I got a call and somebody said, "Hey, Larry, I'm using the day of install kit and I'm getting 5% off the slab when I press this meter down on the slab, I'm getting 5%. And, they know they need around 4% for their adhesive to really start curing up. I immediately tell them, "Hey, go get a couple of fans, run the air, start moving the air in the room, wait about 45 minutes to an hour, test the slab again, and you'll see it'll start dropping to around 4%. Once it drops down to that, start your install. Do not turn the fans off. Keep them on during the install and after the install in that room. And all you're doing is moving that air because that air is what's holding the moisture and getting drawn into the slab or the adhesive, and it's not curing."
For sure.
So
for sure. So that air movement is pulling the moisture back out of the surface and putting it into the air. As long as, I guess the parameter for that is as long as the air can take the moisture. So you might have
that's correct.
You might have a situation where you'd have to implement something else if you're in a closed situation with a high relative humidity creating that dew point. But would you say it's more common that you get other conditions that create that dew point that's a problem, or do you think?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Oh, I would say so.
So it's.
I mean, there are other things you can run into that are problematic. I mean, the porosity of a slab. If you walk onto a site and your slab's 20 years old,
yeah. I mean,
you might have other issues you're dealing with here.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Larry. Is it's always good to be cognizant if you're dealing with new concrete or old concrete because there are some different nuances. Generally, at Tramex, we consider old concrete anything that's already been covered, and you're recovering. Whereas new concrete, you're dealing with the batch water and the drying, essentially.
That's correct. Yeah, it's good to be mindful of all that and understand all that, because even with a 20-year-old slab with porosity issues and other issues, most of the time, you can work around those by doing the proper mitigation if you need to.
Yeah.
But just understanding that and being mindful of that, knowing that the age of the slab, where you're at with that slab that day. Yeah.
And that's an important point you touched on is moisture mitigation. So using this time of install testing, do you feel it enables the installer to better conclude when to do that? Or how to implement or understand when that moisture mitigation is needed?
Well, I mean, for me, and this is my opinion, most of the time mitigation is only necessary when your adhesive won't cure or won't bond to either the substrate or the product. Because really what's our goal as an installer is to get the material to bond to the concrete substrate, the slab.
Correct.
Now, and stay bonded.
Right.
I very seldom ever after, in fact, I can't even think of a time when an adhesive has 100% cured and then reemulsified itself. Most of the time that it's being reemulsified,
never really
right
cured
after the installation, it never really cured. It never really set up.
Yeah.
And the moisture was always there under that product, and we didn't know it as installers. I think mitigation is necessary on some substrates.
Mm-hmm.
As in my experience, without understanding, the slab very well. In my experience, I know that there are times when you'll need mitigation, especially on older slabs.
Yeah.
But we are doing a lot of mitigation currently on slabs today that don't need to be mitigated.
Yeah. So obviously, if you're doing testing at the time of install and you're getting you cite a high reading on the meter, and you don't see a dew point issue at that specific time, what do you recommend at that point? Do you go to say it's an older slab?
If it's an older slab, I would come back to what's causing that moisture. Where's it coming from? That's a slab problem.
Yeah.
That's not something a flooring installer can correct that day.
Correct.
That has to do with the concrete slab.
I guess unless you're taking into account what conditions are around. I'm imagining, say, I guess the only possibility of that is if you have a no HVAC condition and the conditions are changing, but that moisture is lingered in the slab as that dew point is correcting itself, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
That's correct.
Yeah. So you might see a case like that, I might get a 5, but it was 6 and it's on the way down and my ambient's already adjusted and it's naturally taking longer. So would you run fans anyway to see if it's going to help, I guess, in that case, and get it down?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then if it doesn't,
one of the things that the meter does that the installers have needed for a long time is it gives the installer, the lead installer at that job site, the correct information for him to walk up to the GC and say, look, or the homeowner, whoever it might be, and say, look, I have to pull off this site until I know I have these conditions in your concrete. Otherwise, I can't guarantee my installation.
Yeah.
That it'll bond and that my adhesive will cure. And that's, to pull off a site for a day or two is a lot less money than having to replace something.
Yeah.
So, getting to that place where it's ready.
Yep. So, Larry, what we're going over here, we're definitely considering ambient conditions and how they affect a concrete slab. And I think sometimes, when I go out and work with installers and such, it seems like a lot of guys aren't cognizant of that relationship between ambient conditions and concrete. Whereas, if they're dealing with wood, they're definitely cognizant of ambient conditions in wood. So what do you see as a step forward in trying to educate guys in this way and how much it can help them?
Well, Tramex has done a great job with this meter by putting the solution in the palm of their hand to control their environment.
Yeah, with the hygrometer.
So already from the manufacturer, they know they need a certain temperature in the room. They know that there's certain things they've got to meet as far as acclimation of the products and things like that. What this does is this allows them now to look at the concrete and know, and the ambient conditions and know, and the dew point and know. Within 5-10 minutes, they'll know this site's ready to install with assurance that their adhesive's going to not only bond, but start curing.
Yeah.
And that's controlling your environment. In the past, we've never trained installers how to control their environment, their ambient environment.
Yeah.
Because what most installers don't realize is and what we've been told for years is the moisture's coming from underneath. That's not the case. There's moisture everywhere, and there's ambient moisture we need to deal with. And understanding that, is where some of your installers who understand that have no issues with bond and with moisture.
Right.
Where other installers who don't truly understand this, they're the ones having to rely on other people's information to get their bond, where it could be just in the palm of their hand.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the beauty, that it's always there. So you don't even have to press a separate button to see that information. It's just right there on the meter. And this addresses, I think, a place where there's been some lack in moisture testing is the, time of install testing, and like you said, considering ambient or dew point. I know within ASTM currently there is some wording coming forward in FO6 regarding dew point, and some guidelines regarding dew point that they're trying to move through ASTM, so that is there. But before now, there hasn't been any reference to this, to dew point or the importance of time of install testing, even though we see that, again, that the F2170 or 1869, within both of those standards, it mentions that the results are only good at the time of the test. Yeah, I think it's a big gap that that this time of install testing can fill, and just, like you said, put some power back in the hand of the installer.
Well, and from a manufacturer's perspective as well, knowing that if an installer, now I'm gonna come to you with information like, as if an installer called me as a manufacturer's tech support, one of the first questions I'm going to ask them, if it's a bond issue or they're having issues with something with our adhesive, I'm going to start asking the questions. How old is the slab? What was the temperature of the slab, or what is the temperature of the slab? What's your dew point temperature? And I'm not the only one that's asking these questions. And in the near future, what installers are going to see on installation instructions from manufacturers, I believe, is a request for these same answers. Is, hey, did you take the slab temperature at the time of install or the day of install? And what was the dew point temperature, and what was your relative humidity?
Right.
They'll start asking those kind of questions, actually recommending them in their instructions. It's just a matter of time you're going to start seeing those. It's coming.
It seems like the logical progression, that if you can do this to make an installation successful, then that should be part of the installation instructions.
Absolutely. I mean, if I have an installer who calls me and says, Larry, your adhesives, let's say your adhesive goes up to 95% RH, and we have, according to the ASTM standards, we've run these RH tests, which they should have done on their site, and all our readings are correct, but we have about 3 readings that are like 96, 97% RH. What should we do? And this is where this day of install kit really comes in handy, because then I can take that information they've already given me, which is critical, and we can go into those areas and test those areas and see what the true reading is coming out of the surface or the top 3/4 inch, and make a determination there whether our adhesive will actually start curing or not. And that's really what matters. It's not replacing RH. It's not replacing calcium chloride testing. What it's doing is it's just putting another really valuable tool in the hands of the installer on the day of install. And that's what's most important, because that's when it really matters.
That one point that you mentioned there was which leads me to question is, we see adhesive manufacturers continually giving higher numbers for the tolerance of the adhesives. And I think this is something that might, as you get, 95, 98, 99, the tendency is that it might make installers feel like, well, there's no need to moisture test.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a catch-22 in our industry. So we know that most of our larger commercial sites, especially, but most of our larger sites are going to have RH tests, because that's the standard set by the industry. And they should be testing for that, correct? Right. But the problem is what it's done now it's forced manufacturers who either make adhesives or have adhesives manufactured for them for their products. It's forcing those manufacturers to take adhesives up to 95, all the way up to 100% RH. Our adhesive is approved for 100% RH. That's great, except it still doesn't tell us on the day of install, is there an ambient condition that might get in the way of that adhesive curing? And that's where this day of install is going to be critical.
And that's a good point, because these in situ RH tests, again, are looking to the depth of the slab. So we acknowledge that that's important, and that should continue to be done. But this test, we're looking at a different part of the slab, again, where the rubber meets the road up in the top portion of the slab, where it can be affected by ambient. And even if it's an adhesive that goes to 99%, you're saying you're going to have an issue with a dew point problem, that you're going to have an issue with that adhesive curing.
That's a great point, David, because here you can have an issue, a moisture issue, after mitigation because of ambient conditions. If your slab temperature is 10 degrees below your dew point temperature, and that slab that's been mitigated is drawing that vapor, that moisture out of the air and putting it on the surface of that slab, that adhesive is not going to be able to cure properly. So even though it's been mitigated, they're still dealing with it. So, this is just like a final step for the installer to actually know on that day of install, man, I know my adhesive is going to start to cure and it's going to bond. We know it all bond to the products because the manufacturers do their share of testing through their R&D departments. So we know our adhesives are made to bond to our products. What we want it to do is bond to the substrate. And one of the things that gets in the way of that bonding is the cure time and the surface of the slab. Of course, how clean, contaminants, etc.
Right.
But moisture, surface moisture is critical. So that's where this meter's pretty valuable tool.
Excellent. So Larry, when you're seeing this time of install testing implemented, what kind of results are you getting from it?
David, it's been great because over the past 2-3 years, I've been working with a half a dozen installers across Northern California area, Nevada area. And we've been on some sites that started out with a pretty high RH reading. They didn't want to mitigate the slab, so we used these day of install kits to walk us through the day of install to get the moisture readings down to 4%, get the slab temperatures, dew point temperatures, everything correct. And to this day, we've had no issues, no claims, no moisture problems. The adhesive cured and things work correctly. So it's really given us some good direction. One, how to use the kit properly, when to use the kit, on the first day of installation, and to take that information and to get it back to the right people so you can determine what's the next step.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's good to see when something works.
Yeah, it's just another. Again, I keep saying it, but it is a really valuable tool to have in your box on the day of install. When you want your adhesive to set up the way it's supposed to. Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I wished I had it when I was younger and installing. I don't install anymore.
Yeah, probably like a lot of other technology.
Oh yeah, things
it would have made your life easier.
Yeah. I love that it puts the control of the environment into the hands of the installer where it belongs, because installers have the biggest target on their back in our industry. And we all know that. I mean, everybody looks to them when there's issues and problems. And so that this really, not only that, but I like the fact that Tramex has the cloud where you can save all the information on the day of install. You can go back to that information if something's happening, if anybody questions what you did that day, because it could be that there are other moisture related issues other than the surface that might cause future claims or problems. That information saved on that file from that cloud will give the installer what it needs to protect his bats, because he's got the target on it. So
yeah, that's a good point, Larry, because the Tramex Meters app makes it really easy to document that installation quick check. So the guys can take screenshots of readings. They can do a little map that'll record the readings that they take without even having to physically write them down. They can just tap and they go into a grid and then they're saved. But like you mentioned, the other feature of the app is the cloud. So, for small firms that have multiple installers, everything that's put into the app is accessible from the Tramex cloud. So it could be pulled up on a desktop from a project manager, or the installation manager that's controlling the different jobs, and he can see what testing is going on and what the results are. But also, like you said, to be able to document it. I know I did a Tramex Talks with William Thornton from Tarkett a year or so ago, and he told a story about receiving moisture testing information on a paper plate that was stained with barbecue sauce. So so this is taking it to another level where you can't just give a paper plate. You got something that's geotagged. It's saying where you were when you took these readings, what time it was, and what the address was. So this is another way for manufacturers to be able to make sure that this testing is done and it's documented. And for the installers, it helps them to save it, like you said, for any future problem that arises. They can show that they were checking the conditions at the time of install. That's a point too, Larry. Is this usually if guys aren't documenting ambient conditions and there's a failure, and somebody goes back to detect what caused this moisture failure, it's hard to determine if it's a dew point issue. So I think this is one of the reasons that dew point has gone so long without being flagged as a big problem.
That's correct. And, just saying you did an RH test doesn't remove you from the claim. You're
Correct.
Still responsible for that installation, whether you did the RH test or not, and whether the RH reading at the time or the day it was done. On a lot of manufacturers' instructions, it's going to state that that was good on the day it was done, not on the day of install. Right. So it does give the installer the muscle he needs on that day, and the information he needs on that day to protect himself on that installation. And that's what 100%. Yeah, that's what we've needed for a long time when it comes to dealing with things like this.
So is there a way, Larry, that installers can find out how to learn more about implementing the installation testing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I would tell an installer is that Tramex has a great communication with YouTube videos that they've already put out. It's really good information, and you can find that through the Tramex website. And if you're interested or have questions, feel free to please email me at installercertified@gmail.com. That's installercertified@gmail.com. It's that simple. My name's Larry Marvel, and give me a couple days to answer your emails, and I'll get right back to you if you have questions on anything you want to know about using these Dave install meters or anything installation related. I'd love to help.
Excellent. And we did some. I was fortunate to come out to California, and we visited the Union Hall in Sacramento. Did some training there. We're hoping to get back to San Francisco, do some training. So we're looking to get out and educate installers. When we'd encourage installers, you can contact, if you're a union installer, you can contact your union hall and ask them about training in time of install testing. Or like we said, you can contact Tramex or you can contact Larry. Larry's a very knowledgeable guy, so he can definitely answer questions related to flooring installation much better than I can.
Yeah, you can also contact me through Tarkett at larry.marvel@tarkett.com on all things Tarkett Excellent. Related. I am doing this video with and for Tramex. because I've seen the results and heard Bob Higgins talk about the science. So I think it's important information for the individual installers to have. That this is not a Target related video. It is a Tramex related video. I have to throw that out there because I do work for Target as technical support.
Yeah.
But I have seen the great results and the much needed results at the job sites. Now,
on that point, Larry, we do seem to get some, we'll get some resistance from some and say, well, is this a ASTM standard? I don't see, so forth, so on like that. What kind of, are you seeing some of that in the field?
Oh, absolutely. Every time, the conversation comes up about using a Tramex meter or something else, one of the first questions people are going to ask is it an ASTM standard? And, those are real important questions to ask because the standard is what we live by. But I always say there's not a standard for about 95% of the tools in my toolbox. There's no written standard for that tool, but the tool makes me successful. So my reply to them, I'm sure at some point you're going to see an ASTM standard with this type of meter being used on the day of install. But what I will tell you right now, it's an important tool to have in your box.
They're solving problems and satisfying warranties. So, and creating successful installations. So
yeah, get the target off your back.
Yeah, there you go. And I know from your side of things, what you want to see is successful installations. And Tramex is, happy to be able to provide something that helps that happen for sure.
Absolutely. I appreciate the work you guys have done on these meters. They really give us a lot of great information.
Yeah, and we appreciate you, Larry. Seeing them implemented in the field and relaying the success that you're experiencing, and hopefully others can start to implement this process. Simple, instant, easy process to ensure successful flooring installations.
Yeah, and maybe we can all meet with William Thornton someday and make our own barbecue plate mess.
There you go. All right, Larry. Well, thanks for joining us today on Tramex Talks, and we wish you all the best. Hopefully, seems like the weather's shifted in California. We hope things start to dry out there, and not too many of your installation sites got flooded.
Well, thanks for the invite, David. And again, I thank everybody involved with Tramex and the company and what you guys are doing for installers. I appreciate your time and efforts. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Excellent. Thanks, Larry.
You got it.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.